Season 3. Are we in season 3 still, or is this season 4?
This is the last episode.
Okay.
Well, I guess we could. I guess technically we shift over into.
Next week is the week before school starts, so I think we're okay. I think next week should be season 1. I
So
mean
that's what.
season 4. Sorry.
Do you want to? So we'll start season 4 next week.
Well, I just justified in my brain why we should, but I would like to
That
hear your
works.
thoughts.
No. I think the first of. I think in the past. I don't know. I have to check our back catalog, but I'm imagining that in the past, season 4 started when September started.
I'd like to think, in my little brain, I think that when we started this, we started the week before school started.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, it's like it's okay for this to be a season 3 episode, not a season 4 episode.
Okay.
If it doesn't work with you, though, I can say season 4 right now and then change it on YouTube.
No. We're good.
So it's season 3, episode 45. I'm Roland Chidiaki, Chris Clough. This is the Decoded podcast. I feel like that's the only thing that I say every episode that's the same. Like, because every episode tends to be really different, not really different, but different. And that's the only thing that stays standard is my little introduction at the beginning. And then I would follow up with our sponsors, but we don't have any. So it's just...
And we've always been good with that, so...
I know, but it's fun to joke around.
That is true.
So, man, we started our morning talking about leadership, and it like pretty much enveloped our entire on-ramp in one way or another. So if it's okay with you, I want to drop something around leadership. If it's good with you, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
So I attended an information session for educators who want to become principals and vice principals with the public school board in my city. And what caught my eye was a tweet that you sent my way where they were basically saying, hey, if you're Indigenous, Black, or a person of color, we're looking for people like you, because we have learned that in our system, we don't have that representation, and people are kind of looking for it and asking about it. So, hey, if that fits the bill for you and you're an educator and you want to be a leader, check us out.
Mm-hmm.
That spoke to me because I had never seen anybody ask like that before in such a blunt fashion. And so I checked it out, and it was a really cool experience because as I was paying attention to the information session, I was making connections to my experience within my school board, and I was connecting the dots at that level. So basically, there are some themes, right? Like if you are a teacher and you want to become a principal or a vice principal in Ontario, there are some themes that you should be aware of, like the Ontario Leadership Framework, right? You should be familiar with that. You should be familiar with your school board's mission, vision, priorities, strategic plan, right? Like these are things that when I talk like this to my teacher friends who aren't interested in leadership, they start to blow me off, kind of thing, like, hey, stop talking like that. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. Even if I wasn't interested in leadership, don't you think it's important that the way I operate within the system fits with the strategic goals of our system? Like, don't you think there should be some alignment? And trust me, I'm all for doing your own thing. I've been doing my own thing for years, but that's at the surface, you see me doing my own thing. But if you were to dig a little bit deeper underneath the surface, you would see that my philosophy and the way I operate and the things that I am doing at the surface, they do connect to what my school board is all about. And I do think there needs to be alignment. What it looks like and how you align, that's the beauty of it for me. You can do that any way you want, in my opinion. So it was really cool experience to hear this school board talk about equity, human rights, anti-racism, at a deep level, not just on the surface. They took it deep, which I really appreciated. It was kind of refreshing to hear senior administration talk like that about those topics. So it was refreshing to me. Like, I felt good about what I was participating in, and it was really cool leadership exercise to start to make connections to my world as a classroom teacher interested in becoming an administrator and connecting those dots. And one thing that kept coming up was the relationship between the teacher candidate for leadership and their immediate supervisor. And so along the way, in the conversation, the discussion that was happening here around leadership in that board, it kept coming back to, this is what we're looking for. So when you're answering this question in the package, because they went over their application package, make sure that it aligns with what you said here, and make sure that your immediate supervisor, what they're going to say about you and your work, aligns with what you're telling us in your application package. And at one point, one of the speakers was quite blunt and said, hey, like, if there's a disconnect, that's not going to work in your favor. So are you communicating with your supervisor about what you're doing in the building? We would think that you are, because even though you're not a formal leader, you're still engaging in activities and initiatives that are benefiting your students, the staff, and the school community. And I really took it to heart. I took it to heart. And I have to tell you, at this moment in my educational career, I do work with a principal and a vice principal that know what I'm about, that know what I'm doing, and they know why I'm doing it. In fact, sometimes I assist them with things because they know that I have a skill set and a knowledge base and the capacity to enter into that area and be able to use my gifts to help the school community and to help them get something done. So for me at this point, it's not a concern. If I sat down with my principal, my vice principal, and said, I'm applying to this school board for a position of leadership, here's the application package. I need to answer questions. They would like you to answer questions, and they'd like to speak to you if I have the opportunity to speak to them in an interview. And by the way, it should all align. Like that, none of that is concerning to me at this point, because I know that my principal, my vice principal, they know me as a human and as an educator. And so I'm confident that what I would say in the application package, which they would get to obviously be a part of, since we have to kind of work together, they'd be part of that process. It doesn't concern me. But what does concern me is that I know colleagues who work for administrators who are not supportive of their leadership journey. And then that upsets me. Like at a very basic human level, it upsets me, because my perspective is, if you're a school leader, you're a servant leader. You're there to serve. You're there to support. So a couple of things pop up. If one of your teachers wants to become an administrator, there should be a connection, right? Like, if I was a principal and I found out Jill down the hall one day is applying to the VP pool but has never talked to me about it, I'd like to talk to Jill, because what if a supervisory officer calls me and says, "Hey, Jill down the hall in your school has applied to become a leader in the system." Well, I don't want to be a jerk, but at the same time, like, I'm going to tell the SO, well, I didn't know that. So that tells me a couple things. Number one, maybe Jill's not comfortable with me at all. Maybe Jill's just like, I don't want to deal with him. I don't want to talk to him about my leadership journey. So that's kind of a problem for me, because if I'm there to support you and you're feeling unsupported, then something's going on. There needs to be a hard conversation there, a tough conversation. Or if Jill comes to me and Jill says, I want to be a leader, I just applied to the pool, but I'm not, as a school leader, I'm not aware of what Jill's doing to make connections to the leadership framework or leadership initiatives within the building or outside of the building that she's participating in to make a difference in the system. If I'm not aware of any of those things, then, like, what am I I can speak to who she is on my staff, because I should get to know my staff members and how they operate in their classrooms and what they're about that way. But from a leadership perspective, then there needs to be another tough conversation like, but Jill, like, tell me about what you've done, because I'm not really privy. But that's a conversation that then is like, so in both these situations, I see myself as having to humble myself to figure out what I'm not doing right because Jill's not feeling good. Now let's take it another notch. Let's take it to Jill and I don't get along as humans. I'm her principal, she's my teacher, but we don't get along. We don't see eye to eye. She doesn't want to talk to me about what she did on the weekend or her family, and I don't want to disclose any of that stuff to her either. These are the things nobody's talking about. But here's my position on that. If Jill comes to me and says she still wants to be a leader, whether I like Jill or not, we need to have a conversation about what this looks like and what happens moving forward so that I can support her as best as I can as a system leader for someone who wants to become a system leader. And do I think that's going to be fun? Probably not, because we don't get along. Probably not. But I still feel like if that's what she wants to do, and everybody's talking about these tough conversations, that it needs to be had. Maybe the best thing for Jill is that I not be her principal anymore. Maybe Jill needs to wait until I leave to really feel comfortable, or Jill needs to transfer. And I would be happy looking at this from a looking at this as objectively as I can be. She needs to find someone who maybe she likes and likes her, and then work from that perspective. But if she were to stay, then I would say I will support you, but like, let's put together a plan so that when I speak to your leadership, I have black and white stuff to talk about, and I can say as a school leader how this benefited her and the staff and the kids. Like, let's go there. So I'm in a good spot. I've not always been in a good spot. I've had a few times where I've worked in a school where I didn't feel any support from my administrator, and like no support as a teacher. So I wasn't getting any support as somebody who wanted to get into leadership. Right now, I do feel it. I feel I'm supported, and I feel like if my principal sat me down and said, "You're talking about this initiative, but I don't really see it." I wouldn't take that as like he's not supporting me. I would take that as, okay, well then I guess I need to provide you. I need to talk to you more. I need to provide you with more data. I need to provide you with more artifacts. I need to have you come and see this and hear this so that you feel confident with it. But that's because there's a relationship there. So they talked about relationship, very key. And I agree 100%. You don't have that, then you're missing all the ingredients to move forward. And so I just wanted to pull that out of the closet and say, like, for people I know who are interested in school leadership but don't feel supported or don't feel comfortable speaking to their administrator about it, that sucks. So I'm not going to pretend it doesn't suck. It sucks, and there's fear there, and there's vulnerability, and it's like none of it's easy. Now, Clough, I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I don't know. But I will say that it exists, and nobody seems to want to talk about it.
I think, I mean, for me, I don't tend to talk much about my, let's say, my leadership, whatever it's my philosophy of it or my strategy of it. For me, I tend to follow, when it comes to sort of like professional, let's say, development, I tend to follow trends are important to me. Seeing the front end of trends are important to me. Things that spark my curiosity. If I dig down through that, part of, I'm a right fighter. So I know that if I suspect or see that places of power are not working in favor of places of non-power. Like if I think power structures are just reinforcing themselves, then I tend to kind of go into attack mode and try and break those things down and open up spaces. Like it's, if I were to make it really simplified, when I was a kid, I was constantly, there's an element of, there's a bullied kid inside of me that just thinks if I can sort of keep that from happening, and my lens as far as looking to see who's being kind of pushed down in the schoolyard, whether it's a system tool that's doing it to a group of people, or if that's just kind of my mindset. So I find that my leadership, when I get curious about a topic or a pursuit, I just kind of do it, and I start to look into it, and I start to shape my understanding and gather my research. And I don't often, I'll say I'm not the person that explicitly asks to do something. Like I just kind of start doing it. And then sometimes people notice, sometimes they don't. Am I aware that I need to account for some of these because I am a professional teacher? I'm aware of keeping track of these events and putting them, onto the resume. And I'm aware of the language of resumes and how, if I don't articulate my experience in a way that the system wants me to talk about that experience, and sometimes that experience won't be recognized. So if you're going to be doing projects that are aligned with student success, then you need to use the language of student success to shape it, no matter what the project is. You're going to do projects in literacy. Well, you need to use the language of literacy to kind of meta tag your experiences. So, but sometimes I'm slow to do that. I just kind of stay immersed in the task. And then at some point I think to myself, damn, I should have curated better, or kind of I should have had more conversations. Like I feel like I'm constantly in this reflective kind of mode. I don't have a sense right now of where if we're playing with the leadership piece here, I don't have a sense of what my next step is right now, or the needs of my leadership, only because I am going to a new school, and I have no connection. I don't have any specific professional connection to anyone there. I haven't developed any of that. Some social connection, I know people, but direct professional connection, and even any understanding of the community needs. So I'm in a gray zone right now. I don't really have a plan. I don't have a sort of like a rule book that I'm coming in with to sort of figure that out. I'm just going to observe and then kind of move into a space that I feel like I can fulfill, and that has invited me to sort of fulfill, if that makes sense. But that's kind of, I don't know what my new administrator's expectations of me, or what that relationship with me of being a leader looks like yet. Zero clue. Zero. Maybe that's good, bad. Maybe this is also a reflection of my own privilege. Me even suggesting that I can still keep moving along a leadership path and be successful. That's probably there's a huge amount of privilege there. Me assuming that I I will find something that opportunity won't be kept for me. I wonder if other individuals would be as positive going to a new school, if there would be a real concern that without having rapport, that opportunities would be kept from them.
That's interesting. And I don't know if, for me, that perspective has to do with you as privileged, or the whole high school versus elementary. So if we could shift gears for a second along the same ideas what you're talking about. I know in elementary, when you show up to a new school, I've had some really interesting experiences transferring schools. I've had experiences where people assume that you will do certain things because of who you are and the reputation you have. But then there's also an assumption that you won't come in and take over certain things because other people already do them. It's really weird, and I'm still a little bit like kind of struggling with that whole idea. So I'll give you an example. So the last school I was at, when I got there, when I interviewed for the position, I told the principal that like, she's like, well, what are you going to bring to our school? Like, tell me about some of your gifts, some of your interests. And I said that I was coming with a ministry project around 3D printing. And so I broke it down for her and I explained the idea behind the project and like what my goals were and what I wanted to achieve. And it wasn't simply like a bunch of kids are going to learn how to use a 3D printer. It like, we got into mathematics, we got into science and technology, we got into risk taking. Like, it was like, if this works the way I want it to work, you're going to have a crew of kids that leave me and go to the next class looking at mathematics differently, and hopefully in a more positive way, which is going to increase their achievement in mathematics. So we dug, like, I went right down to, this is going to help kids with their learning and their achievement. And so, you know, when I ended up finding out I was going there, I was stoked and she was super excited too, because she was like, this guy's coming with something, which was totally independent of the building. But when I got to the building, you know, I was interested in doing other things. And I was told, well, so-and-so already does that here. And it was like, okay, well, I'm respectful of people. So I'm going to go talk to so-and-so and I'm going to get a feel for, you know, are they just doing it because they've been doing it forever and they don't want to do it anymore? What's happening here? So I'd go and talk to the person and be like, hey, I was told that you run this here. I'm really interested in this. So I'm looking at, are you interested in giving it up? Are you interested in collaborating? Like, where are you with this thing? And some people were very polite in telling me that they had no interest of giving up a particular extracurricular or whatever, but that they were open to collaboration. So I was like, okay, so that was cool that they were honest with me. And things worked out. I ended up finding my groove in a way that I don't believe offended anybody. And if it did, well, they never got back to me. Then I moved to the school I'm at now. And it's funny because there's an extracurricular activity. It's called site administrator, and the site administrator is responsible for like IT type stuff. So if people are having issues with their tech or the internet or whatever, I'm the in between to IT, to the help desk where you post your problems and figure out what's going on. So I get to this new school, and I've been the site administrator at several different schools, and I've really enjoyed it because I enjoy the whole tech stuff, right? And it's a great way to meet people because people come to you like, I'm Joey, I teach grade 5 down the hall. My computer's not working. Can you please help? And it's like, oh, I'm Roland. And so it's cool to build rapport that way around something that I have an interest in. But it's also cool to just know what's happening in the school. Like if somebody's having an issue, I can be like, we sent in a request. Don't worry, they're going to work on it. So it's like, talk to Roland, he'll know because he's the one that's the in-between. So I get to this new school and I find out there's already 2 people doing it. Neither one of them is letting go of it. So I'm like, okay. So I don't push that. But then other people say to me, how come you're not the site admin? And I'm like, well, because so-and-so and so-and-so are the site admin. And they're like, but you'd be great at it. And I'm like, I don't think you're understanding that there's already 2 people who have the role. They're not interested in giving up the role, and I'm not interested in fighting with them because that's what it would lead to. It would lead to like conflict. So I joke around that one of the 2 people who was doing it has transferred out. And a buddy of mine, like I got to know him. He got to know me. We collaborated. It was good professional relationship, which has turned into a personal friendship. And I joke with him. I'm like, thank God you left because now I can be site administrator. And then we just laugh about it or whatever. But now it's open and I'm grabbing it because it's my wheelhouse. And now if somebody comes to me and says, I would really like to do it, then I'm gonna like, well, let's talk, because I've been waiting 2 years to do it, and maybe we can do it together in some way. But I'm really interested, and I've been waiting. So if you've been waiting too, then let's talk about it. But like, it's one of those things where there has to be some blunt conversation. Like, I've been waiting 2 years, and you've never said a word to anybody about it, and I've made it known to everybody that I was interested. So again, relationship conversation. But some people automatically assumed, like, because I walked in the building, they're like, he's going to be the site administrator. No, I'm not. And I've had that expectation of me in several different locations where I walk in, people like, he's just going to take this over. And I'm like, well, that's not really my style of like operation. That's not how I prefer to make enemies in different ways. I don't want to walk in and start making enemies like that. I want to do it over something really good, not something like worthless like that. So it's interesting. I don't know. I know in elementary there's a jockeying. Some people walk in and they just bulldoze everything. I worked at one school where a new person came in and was like, I'm going to lead this committee and I'm going to lead that committee. And we were looking at her and we're like, there are already people who do that here. Like, maybe you want to talk to them and collaborate. She's like, no, I'm taking over. And guess what? That person didn't have very many friends in the building. In fact, to take so I just stayed away from this person, because every time I talked to this person, it was a competition. I'm like, I'm not here to compete. I just wanted to ask you about something or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, hands off. I'm not interested in fighting. I don't want to fight. And I'm not interested in competing with this person all the time. So I walked away. At the end of a school year, something had come up, and this person wasn't being supported in a way that she felt she should be supported. And she had nobody to turn to, because she had no friends in the no real friends in the building, because of the way she bulldozed everything when she came in. Word got out that I was experiencing the same lack of support in a particular area that she was experiencing. So all of a sudden she's in my classroom and she's like, I heard this about you. And I'm like, that's nice. And we need to do something about it. I said, we don't need to do anything. You go do what you need to do, and I'm going to do what I need to do. She's like, no, Roland, we need to work together on this. And I was like, I've been trying to work together with you for 9 months. And at every turn, you put up roadblocks. And I didn't want to crush you, so I walked away. So I don't know what you're talking about. I have stayed away from you and your initiatives because you don't play nice in the sandbox. Bottom line. So we're not joining forces here for anything. You're on your own. You did that to yourself. And now you're in my room and you're asking for my support. I'm sorry, I can't give it to you. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I mean, if you're not going to like me, that's fine. Don't like me. But I'm not going into a place and just tearing it up because I'm Roland and Roland's going to do this and Roland's going to do that. No, I'm not. I've never been that person. Who knows? Maybe I could become that person, but I've never been that person. So that's how kind of my perception of how it operates in elementary. I don't know. There's always a big dog in every school. I don't know if it's like that in high school. Maybe it's like that in high school with departments. But when you walk into an elementary school, we don't have departments. We have divisions, but sometimes lines overlap. In every school I've been at, there's always a big dog, and it's not the principal. Sometimes it is the principal, and sometimes it's not the principal. There's one or two teachers that are a force to be reckoned with. And if you get along with them, then things are good. And if you don't get along with them, then things might not be good. My perspective on that is I acknowledge the cultural position that person has in a building, but I don't let it interfere too much with how I operate. Like I told you, I'm going to do my thing. And if you dig deep, you'll see that my thing aligns with what the school board, their mission and their vision and their strategic goals and priorities. And I'm going to do what I need to do for my kids. And if it gets in the big dog's way, then we have a conversation. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. I'm now, unfortunately, because of the reading I've done over the pandemic, staying home and not having to go to the school to work, I've done some reading that's kind of empowered me and opened up a new part of me. Um, and so I'm a little concerned that if I see big dog treating people in a fashion that doesn't involve any equity, maybe some racism, maybe some like just not being a good human, I think I may need to speak up and just say like, hey, I see what you're doing and I don't think it's right. Um, and I don't know what that looks like because I haven't had to do that yet, but I suspect it'll happen. And I would hope that somebody would come to me and do the same and say, hey, I don't like the way you're like what you did the other day. That was not cool, man. But there's a way of doing things, right? And I just feel like the Brene Brown, Dr. Kendi, um, these things, the writing they've done and the work that they're doing is coming at me in a way that's opening doors for me that have been closed for many years. And then my interest in leadership and my like the vulnerability I have there in leadership too is kind of like all these things are mixing, and they're kind of creating like a new Roland, or like a slightly different Roland who's looking at things differently, who's asking more questions, who's being a little bit more critical. And I'm getting older, so that helps too. Like it doesn't hurt that, like, if you want to call it a midlife crisis or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't hurt that it's happening now, because it's kind of like the perfect storm to have me be aware of what's happening. Um, I'll give you an example that's like really small and it's not a big deal, but it kind of is a big deal to me. So this information session from the school board down the street, that's not mine, I notified my principal, my vice principal, that I was going to be attending, because I'm not like, I'm not hiding anything. I'm letting them know, hey, there's a really cool opportunity down the street. The way that they phrased what they're about to do is really speaking to me right now as a person of color. It's speaking to me as a person who's made fun of for the food I ate, the clothes I wore, the language I spoke, the parents I had and still have, my mom's around. What they're talking to me now in a way that is not negative. So I'm taking all the negative things about how I was spoken to, and I'm putting it aside. I'm like, these people are talking to me in a positive way. I want to listen. So I informed them. And then I told them after the session, I'm going to be emailing our superintendent of leadership to let her know what my experience was during this session, the things that I liked, things maybe I didn't like, the connections I made, and maybe some things that I pick up that I think our board could really benefit from if we kind of adopted some of these things. And they're like, that's cool. But like, to me, it's not about, it's like, yeah, I'm emailing the superintendent, but I'm not just saying, how's your Sunday? It's like, hey, I know that you take care of leadership in our system. Oh, and disclosure, I've worked with this superintendent on an innovation committee. So I know who she is. She knows who I am. And I'm comfortable speaking to her. I believe we have a rapport, and I really like her, like, as a person, as an educator, as a superintendent. So it's like, it's not a huge jump leap for me to email her and to tell her what I experienced, what I saw. So I emailed her and I told her, hey, this is what I experienced in this information session. These are some of the connections I made to our school board. Here's been my experience around leadership with our school board. I wonder why we're not doing this, or I wonder if we could do this in some fashion to help with leadership in our system. And this is coming from just a classroom teacher with an interest in leadership, right? And she responded, she wants to talk. So I'm like, hey, 2 thumbs up. That's awesome. She would like to hear more from me. Beautiful. That's all I can ask for. She's the superintendent of leadership. She takes care of that stuff. I don't. But I have something to say, and she's willing to listen. So that's a small example that if I were to say that to one of the newer teachers in my building, they might faint. Like, you did what? You went down the street and now you want to talk about it? someone in a position of authority over you? Yeah, because I don't see it that way. I see me growing, and I see me assisting the system I currently work for by providing some insight into some new knowledge that I've acquired that might be able to help the people, my brothers and sisters that work in my school board. That's how I see it. I don't see it as me causing problems. My administrators know where I was and what I was doing and why I did it, and they're open to talking about it, and they've been supportive of me this entire time in my growth and development as a person under their supervision and as a person who's just growing to become whatever it is that I become as I move forward. Like I told, it's the perfect storm for me right now. I'm working in a building where I feel I'm making a difference. I'm working in a building that's highly racialized. The population of my school is a majority Black and people of color. That is not, it's not a joke. It's a fact. And so I look at the way I'm operating in the building. I got to look through different lenses. I got to look through different lenses to reach these kids and to support these kids. And with this pandemic and what school's going to look like when we go back is also drastically different than anything we've done before. Drastically different, like not having them work in groups the way we did before. Even my wife and I are talking about how are we going to do our literacy assessments, because we are concerned. Like, I don't want to have 5 kids like right on me like maybe they were before. And I don't think it's responsible of me because maybe those parents, they don't want that either. So I could be like, no, I'm doing literacy assessments. I'm helping your child learn to read. And they're like, we don't care what you're doing. Can you please maintain at least that 1 meter distance with my child? Like, that's a whole other layer, because my layer is I'm here to teach your kid how to read. So if your kid needs to sit half a meter away from me while I wear my mask and my shield to watch them read and to take my, like, write my observations down about what they're doing and what I need to do to help them. If you're not comfortable with that, okay, like, I won't do it. But my intention is to help them learn to read. And I don't want to get close to them, but I think with all my protection, my PPE, I think it's still doable that I might be able to do some of these things that last year I had to do them. If I didn't do them, people are like, why aren't you doing your literacy assessments, right? So we got lots of lenses to look through here. But I'm kind of excited because I'm not letting go of my leadership lens. I'm using it to see how can I lead here? How can I, now that I've got this information from the board down the street and what they're looking for, it's a good opportunity for me to look at things in a more systematic way, to look at my leadership in a more systematic way, and to use that practice to not only benefit me, but to benefit my students, my school, and my school board. Now, whether I apply down the street or not, that's a whole other thing. But what they're looking for, what they want to see, I'm seeing as a wonderful opportunity for me to grow. So, like, instead of being nervous, like, I don't have anything to tell them. No, I'm looking at it like, oh man, this is beautiful. Like, they've just given me a framework for me to look at leadership in a different way, using my system's priorities and strategic mission and vision to benefit me, my students, my school community. And if I choose to apply to the board down the street, I have no problem telling them that the package they provided to me for their applicants helped build me up. And what I did here, I can bring to you. Like, so it's not about, for me, like, I'm not walking around telling everybody I want to be a leader, but the people that need to know. And the work I hope to do will inform me in a slightly more amped up way around leadership. I see that as opportunity. I'm open to that opportunity. I'm not scared of it. I welcome it. So I'm not looking at it that way. But these are small examples of like how people shift. If it wasn't for this pandemic, I wouldn't have read those books, right? I maybe wouldn't have been a little bit more brash in talking about leadership the way I am. You, me, and Ramona wouldn't have started the podcast around the process of leadership. Like, a lot of things would not have happened if we weren't stuck in our houses like teaching remotely and living life in a completely different way. So again, I'm feeling a little bit more open. I'm feeling a little bit more like there's a fire lit under me. Um, if people don't want me to be a leader in their system, that's okay. I'll find other ways to lead. Like I'll just keep being me, right? And whatever that looks like, whether you like it or not, I have to like it. And I told you before the start of this podcast that I have some minimum goals that must be met in my life. I'm not going to talk about them here, but as long as I'm meeting those goals, then whatever happens around me in the world is okay. It can happen. Everything that's beyond my minimum set of goals is a bonus in my life. That's where I'm at right now. With the life I've lived, the readings I've done, the readings I continue to do, that's where I'm at. And it's my wish that other people grow into this too, because it sucks seeing people living their life based on others' expectations and the worth that others place on them. It sucks. And I think maybe I understand because I've been there. I've been there. I've worked at schools where I would have to give myself a ton of self-talk in the parking lot to get out of the car and get in the building and do the job. And then at the end of the day, I get in my car and I'm wasted. I got nothing left because it took every ounce of energy out of me to go into the building to do the job. And then when I was in my car and I drove home, I felt like I was like, okay, I did it. I'm going to go home and I'm going to enjoy myself at home. And then when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll deal with that. I've gone to work like that. And I'm sure there are people in this world that go to work like that too. And that sucks. And right now I'm not in that place. I'm in a place where I'm excited to go to work. I'm happy to have like the colleagues that I work with working with me. And I'm really pleased with my leadership. I'm really pleased with the challenges they put in front of me, the belief that they have in me, that I'm going to do the right thing, the trust that they have in me, and asking me for my help. Like they're doing a job. They got to meet the needs of many people. And if they see me as being able to assist them, I see that as an honor and a privilege. So I'm in a good place, but don't think I've forgotten about my bad places. Those are what have helped build me and make me kind of who I'm off, like who I am right now. And it's a good place. It's a good place, but I find in my comfort zone, I'm dealing with a lot of skeletons, right? Like I'm dealing with a lot of things that I have set aside for far too long. And that's good, right? Like it's good that I'm dealing with things, but I have to make sure they don't bring me down. I have to make sure that I'm using my time dealing with those things to build me up. And so there might be moments where I do feel down, but that's okay because it's like taking 2 steps back, 4 steps forward. If that's how I'm going to move forward, then it's okay because I'm moving forward. But like, when people say to me, why do you podcast? Why do you blog? I now see those things, those pieces are part of what is helping me move forward. It's really weird too, because unless you're really ready to sit down and have like a Zen conversation with me, you won't understand. So on the surface, people are like, why do you blog? And if I could connect blogging to leadership for a minute, I decided years ago when I was doing a leadership course in my school board, I decided years ago, because they were talking about, okay, you got to have a portfolio. It's non-negotiable. Some of you are not putting together the artifacts or your reflections in a way to demonstrate that to other people. And you have to be able to do that. So I was like, well, I'm not doing this binder paper thing anymore because then I'm just not doing it. I don't want to do it. So like, well, what works for you? And I'm like, I'm going to start a leadership blog. And I started my leadership blog in 2014. And the reason why I know that is because I wrote a post yesterday and pushed it out around the work you, Ramona, and I are doing with the Leadership Podcast. And I wrote about it. I reflected on it. And I made the connection that I always make in my blog posts, my leadership blog posts. Whatever I'm talking about, whatever I'm doing is always connected to the Ontario Leadership Framework. I use the Catholic Leadership Framework because I'm in a Catholic board, but I always make connections to those expectations. Always. That's the purpose of my leadership portfolio. So when someone says to me, do you have a leadership portfolio? I do, but it works for me. So if I'm talking to an SO and they're talking to me about building relationships or improving the instructional program, can you speak to those things, Roland? I will say yes. Let me take you to a blog post that I wrote about that. And let me tell you what I did and how it connects to the leadership framework and how it connects to our school board and how I'm helping my school board move forward and what I'm doing to help students and to help staff move in a positive direction, in a direction that's going to impact student achievement. So I tell you right now, half my friends laugh at me when I talk like that. The other half are like, holy cow, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. That's because I'm living it. So that leadership portfolio, it doesn't look like a binder full of papers and pictures on leadership things you've done. That's not valuable to me. To me, what's valuable is the reflections that go through my head, the connections I make, and then writing them down and putting them there to live. That's my portfolio. And I can make the connections you want made. That doesn't have to be paper and pencil. It just be able to do it, be able to demonstrate it. But if I hadn't started that blog, I would probably have paper and binder sitting here beside me, and really no real reflection would have happened for me, right? It would just be there as an artifact. Here, look at this. Well, Roland, can you speak to it? Look at this. With my blog, I can speak to it. So for me, it's authentic. And bottom line, that's what needs to happen for me. I'm useless to people. I'm useless to a system if you're going to tell me how you want it done. I would prefer you give me a framework and let me work within that framework. And I know it doesn't work like that for everything. I'm not saying it has to, but I'm saying leadership for me is like a personal thing. Everybody has their own approach, their own style. This is my style. And it's these things, the podcast, the blog post, sharing on Twitter, recording what I'm doing and pushing it out somehow, making the videos, playing with the audio. These things all are impacting me positively. It leads to reflection. The reflection leads to some kind of artifact, and I make connections and I can speak to it. So unleash the beast. Roland is here. This is what I'm up to. And we talk about it because if somebody wants to talk to me about it, I'm open to talking about it. And I'm open to hearing how other people do it. We had, while I was blabbing, we've had one viewer this whole time since I tweeted out about us podcasting live. And then there was a second viewer who popped out. But it's like these people who are viewing, I'm open to talking. Like I'm open to hearing to what they have to say, whether they disagree, agree, whatever. They make connections, they have ideas. This is the stuff that we're looking for. This is what feeds people. And it's just cool to have this avenue to be able to connect and to learn. So that's what you're getting from me right now, Clough.
It's good stuff. Some of the things that you got me thinking about opportunity a lot and what that can look like to different people. And I think that I'm still riffing off what I mentioned about what I perceive to be opportunity for growth at the new school that I'm going to. And there are things that I think I'd like to be involved with at the school. There, like, just because you kind of get to know, there's generally, a common menu of different opportunities that will kind of be presented to you school to school to school. Every school has local priorities, of course, and they have local, like committees or groups that are focusing on those priorities. But for the most part, you're going to have similar spaces that you can land in order to do the work that kind of is adjacent to your classroom, being a classroom teacher. So I'm kind of stoked. One of the things that I've been doing a lot, I find the last couple weeks. So, and it's sort of when I stopped writing the poetry pieces that I was writing. I had a day. So the whole, anyone who's listening or picks this up, I was doing a series of short pieces, just all titled In September, and just sort of exploring my own confusion, emotional state, disillusion, like a lot of stuff that just, I was basically, as you've kind of mentioned, reflecting out loud. So I was putting it in a digital space and engaging in conversations about it with different people. And I had a day where I no longer, like I didn't have anything that kind of lit me up to write about. So I kind of took that as a cue to that was my catharsis to shift. It was time to sort of think in a different way. I kind of had got all my words out. And when I came out on the other side of that, I started, like you, I use social media actively to observe, to engage, to share, some pushback, to remember, and to light up action, next steps. So I've started to really crave stuff that people are sharing that sort of is starting to talk about the through line into September. So I'm not talking about, right now, I'm not focused on any sort of emotional, compassionate through lines that are sort of supporting students and communities moving through. I'm kind of looking at it more practical, action-based through lines. So a simple one would be, what's your game plan for sort of moving through your day in a safe and healthy way? And I've been looking at and reading blog posts around people talking about, I'm going to have a kit, my sanitation kit. I'm going to kind of do this in my classroom, really kind of concrete steps. Don't know if it's going to work, don't know if it's not going to work, but it feels like the declaration of a concrete step makes it, well, definitely by sort of declaring it out loud, I think you take one step closer to making it a reality. It's one of those steps, I think, in transformation, that just by saying it out loud, that you sort of put it out into the universe and you say, I'm going to make this happen. Pursuing a leadership position is similar. I mean, you build accountability and engagement just by telling someone that you're interested in becoming a department head, or you're interested in exploring new ed tech, right? You sort of, it's an on-ramp to building any sort of communal or community conversation to that, because people now notice, oh, this is something that you're interested in. I'll connect it to Roland, or I'll connect it to Clough. So I think that what I'm gathering right now are these through lines into September, because there's not only have the unknown of just what it means to join a new school community, there's also the overlying unknown of what it means to return to classroom and teach within COVID constraints. So yeah, I put opportunity in there just as a, wondering what it'll take for me to be able to notice opportunity within this return to school in September. And one of the things that sometimes comes along with the opportunity, and I think you mentioned this, is that sometimes people get really drilled down and rooted in the portfolios that they have. So I kind of wonder about portfolios or committees in the new school that people may be looking to play kind of safely and kind of keep the ship straight, and looking for other individuals that are saying, okay, we can't do things the way we did last semester. We can't just kind of keep it safe. We actually have to lead. We have to take a chance and do something. Because I think overall, I'm where I'm kind of coming to at the end of this babble, is that there's a whole lot of people that will not, well, there isn't a likelihood that you can really assure that anything is going to be business as usual. And that might seem redundant or obvious. But I think the opportunity within that is that because we're all in a similar space, that we can shift how we do things. And that makes it kind of really fascinating to see, what will literacy development look like in September? What will student success and equity projects look like in September? And I think the shift, even if the things that people have imagined in their summer book clubs, which, you know, is probably the primary garden that a lot of people spent in these sort of chat groups over the summer, maybe even since March 13th. When we actually get back into the class and you're having to deal with the grind, gymnastics, the minutia of the day, there's different stuff that's going to get squeezed out of the cracks. And I think very quickly we're going to start to realize that if you have been camping out on a portfolio, that a lot of those rules don't apply anymore. So, yeah, maybe there'll be, you know, I don't know, other individuals that are kind of going rogue and just kind of running with something and then looking for forgiveness afterwards. I'll let you know 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now, I'll be back in the classroom doing something with the students and experiencing real-time sort of real life classroom experience, no longer kind of theorizing it from the protection of my nice little office here. So yeah, how opportunity will spring up and what access to those opportunities will look like.
I'm excited about how, you're right, how opportunity springs up and how you can engage with that opportunity. Like, for example, I keep going back to that information session from the other board, but it's just that they spoke to it, right? So when they were talking about answering the questions that they provide their applicants with, you know, they said, like, things are different, right? So, I mean, things are different from mid-March and it continues to today. Things are operating differently in education than they have ever before that we can remember. So they're like, don't let that get in the way. Because people right away, you know, people are like nervous, like, how am I supposed to demonstrate like a leadership type project when I can't do a lot of the things that I would have done traditionally to show you my understanding or my leadership? And that's shifted. It's different now. So I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not like dying to apply, then I don't feel that pressure. I'm sure there are people who are putting together their package right now and are totally going to apply this round to that board's leadership application pool. I'm not feeling that stress. And so I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not going to let go of it either. I need to hold myself accountable to engaging with leadership this year differently than I have before. And I was talking to some people about this and they're like, you're lost. And I'm like, what do you mean? They said, you've been hardcore for years. So you thinking you've not been, and that you need to is ridiculous. They're like, you're thinking down a one-way street. You need to pull over, get out of the car and look around, breathe in the air. Like, you do a lot. You could speak to these things easily. Just stop thinking, kind of thing. You don't need to amp it up. And I'm like, oh, I kind of do. Like, I think this year I need to have different conversations with my administrators. I need to push myself in a different kind of way. And I'm looking forward to it because I want it and I'm ready for it. So I'm doing it. And I don't know what it's going to look like. And that's kind of the fun. And most people will tell you my wife will tell you that I like when things are planned. I like routine. It works for me. But I'm kind of excited that they're really, all the big routines that we had before don't exist anymore. We're going to have to establish new ones, right? Like, and everybody's got the same questions, especially as a primary teacher. How do we handle this? And how do we handle that? And it's like, well, I guess we're just going to have to start doing it to learn how to deal with it. And we're going to have to go, I'm going to have to go slow. I don't know what I'm going to have available to me in my classroom as a classroom teacher when we start. I don't know how much time it takes to do some of the things that I want to do with my kids. So it's just going to be time.
I feel like we're in a whole system sandbox activity. I can remember back in the day when I was still in alt ed, I was doing the headship there. And for the longest, not for the, no, I won't say the longest time. Sorry, that's too big. But for I think 3 years, the staff in our alt ed department was kind of small, like the same individuals. Myself and another colleague were the primary, I guess, components of the alt ed department. And then stuff happened in the program. Actually, what happened was I was the head of alt ed, but the school wanted to start having the hospitality class again. So they said to me, what do you think about doing? So in order to have a headship, you have to be minimum 50% in the program that you're the head of. So you get 6 sections in the school year. So I had 3 sections of hospitality, the grade 11 hospitality class. And then I also had 3 sections of the alt ed. And it was in that year that, because I was no longer, because I think prior to that, we had 12 sections or something like that. So that's enough for 2 full-time teachers. So they gave it to 2 teachers. As soon as I pulled out for 3, then they had to bring somebody else in. And a colleague of mine, Steve, great guy, history teacher, he was open to it, and he was added in as one of the instructors in our program. And one of the questions, we had done a lot of work to kind of talk about what we did in alt ed, and even then it wasn't quite clear, but at the heart of it, and things may have changed, it's been some time since I've been in alt ed, but at the time the cap was 16 kids, and we were running a straight up full sort of alt ed program. There was opportunity in each of the periods. So period 1, 2, 3, and 4, there was always, our alt ed sections were always running. And we potentially, if we had 16 kids, we could have been teaching 16 different courses, because it was the kid that brought the course. We didn't set ahead of time, kind of like block out that period 1 was going to be careers and civics, and that period 4 was going to be grade 9 applied math. We waited to see where the students needed alt ed, the personalized alternative education, and then they would enroll. They would take period 1 with us, and they would say, okay, we kind of need to have X course. I never personally, I don't think anyone in our department ever got to 16 different courses, but that was the nature of it. But Steve coming in, he asked it was a great question, because it really speaks to the big sandbox experiment that we're in right now. He's like, okay, what do I have to prep? So this was in June when we knew he was going to be. And then of course we knew schedules could change, but at that time stuff was fairly calm in our school board, and our staffing was kind of set. There wasn't there weren't any big known shifts going to happen. So, to kind of talk about a shift into a new department in June, sometimes that can be a little bit dangerous, because you don't know, well, this is again the sandbox that we're in right now. You don't really know if you're going to be teaching those courses in September. So Steve was kind of in that space where he was told he was going to be with us, but we also figured over the summer stuff could change. And I said to him, don't prep anything over the summer. I said, don't prep anything over the summer. I said, if you want to, I said, start to go back through your kind of Post-it notes and scribbles and your student success notes, and look at some of the things that you are kind of inspired by to help. Like, what were the tools and strategies you used to help a kid get connected with the curriculum? Look at all that stuff. Now I was kind of laying on the fact, assuming, that he had a reflective practice, or, the rough notes that he could go back to. But I said, spend time thinking about that space, because those are the competencies and skills that you're going to need coming into alt ed. We had spent the first 3 years making deep connections with different departments in the school. So we had all the curriculum, like all the resources to begin with course design, if that made sense. And the truth of it is we didn't really know until September what courses we would be offering. I mean, there could have been a few kids kind of on the waiting list that was like, oh yeah, by the way, this kid is going to be in alt ed in September. So start thinking about, look at their credit counseling summary, check to see what kind of a schedule you could put together for them. So that would be the conversation that would be put to me as the head. But for the most part, we didn't really know the exact number of kids that would be starting with us in any one period in alt ed. And I feel like, Steve wasn't entirely comfortable with that, because you plan for the course. And in doing so, you're planning for outcomes. And you're, as a result of that, alleviating your stress because you've done the necessary prep work to be ready for when that person sits in that seat right there. This is exactly what's not happening now, right? I know on one hand, I have access because I've developed a course. I have course resources to build the courses that I need for September. I've stepped back from going too deep into it only because I could have those courses changed next week. So I feel like we're in this really interesting space, as you mentioned, that there isn't the assurance that I can do school even according to my kind of mixed up rules that I have, and I'm fairly sort of ambiguity tolerant. Like I'm okay there. I don't mind when things kind of get yanked out from underneath me. I'll recover. I'll sort of stumble and kind of get back on track. But I feel that's the sandbox that we're moving into in September. That like Steve, we're being told you need to arrive with competencies and skills, not the curriculum and not necessarily the organizational tools, but what are the tools that you have as a teacher, as an educator, that when heat and pressure are applied, they turn on. And there's sort of like a sub toolkit there that it's the hustle and the grind element of being a teacher that I feel like all educators are being asked to use right now. And we're doing so many things are happening in real time right now as far as change that I can see individuals really getting overwhelmed. And for some people, it's like the hands go up in a real sort of frustrated and emotional gesture because some people are getting steamrolled by these like daily changes. When you have that kind of sort of sense of cacophony, like just like on your change, like that just rattles. It rattles you to the point that you feel like there's just no way I can teach. You have people saying there's just no way I'm going to be ready. There's just no way. Like people start to kind of retrograde and get really sort of down on themselves. Where I started in my previous ramble on this was when I'm looking for social media. Those are the sort of the people that I'm looking for that I wouldn't normally go here, but I'm looking for the concrete thinkers. It's funny. I think last year I'd be looking at the reflective practitioners that are just like so wide and philosophical and pushing my brain out there to like big thoughts that I don't even know how to deal with. I'm actually really appreciative of concrete thinkers and planners right now. The ones that are saying, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and that's all I'm going to hold myself to right now. They're able to kind of reduce it down to a functional list that actually doesn't make September look better, but it makes September look like it's manageable. So, concrete thinkers unite.
I think we just found the title for this episode.
Concrete
thinkers unite.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned this. I mean, you're looking at September as direct action based. Direct action.
Yeah. I can't see how we're supposed to get to all the other things if we can't start there. I don't know. How can we, for many years, people like myself, the cognitive load for me has been placed around the pedagogy because everything else was fluent. How to go to the bathroom, how to get ready for recess, how to eat your snacks, what to do when you don't feel well. All those things had become automatic for me as a practitioner in education. There was no question how to deal with any of those things. So my mindset didn't have to go there. The load was on pedagogy. How do I teach this? How do they learn this? What high order activities do they engage in order to show their achievement? Like That's where your head went, or at least mine did. But now we need concrete thinkers to help us with those everyday mundane things that before were just automatic. Those things are not automatic anymore because of the nature of the pandemic. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, we have to physically operate in a different way, or at least with an awareness around our physical space and how we maneuver it, how we deal with our environment. Brain space, cognitive load is there now. That's where our heads are because we don't know how to make it work. So how can I think about my curriculum and pedagogy when I'm not comfortable with being in a room with 20 primary students? How can I take my head to the good stuff in education when all the stuff that used to be automatic is no longer automatic? I'm looking for direction. I'm looking for support. I'm still trying to figure out how to make sure all my desks are 1 meter apart. That's where my head is. My head's not in the wicked opportunities my kids are going to have around learning mathematics the first week of school because my room's not ready. How can I do all the math stuff and ignore all the physical stuff that needs to work so that my kids are safe, so I'm safe? This thing has flipped the switch. Everything that was once normal is now not normal. So our brain can't go to where we need it the most. But I would argue our brain needs to be where we need it most now, and the rest will come. Once my room is running well and my kids are they're distancing, they got their masks on, they're cleaning their hands every time they leave, every time they come in. We're wiping down computers, we're wiping down desks. When all that stuff becomes normal and it's flowing, then the good stuff's going to flow. The good stuff's going to flow. Me teaching mathematics in a way that they can still do things that's going to benefit their learning and achievement. That'll come, I hope, once I figure out all this other stuff.
I agree. It's the funny, I've started to sort of look at reflective practice with different dimensions to it. And one of the dimensions that I'm trying to stay away from in my reflective practice is the abstract. To sort of be concrete in my reflective practice has been challenging because it sometimes is confrontational. And I was talking to a buddy last night. We were out, and he has a deep streak of worry in him. He's a father, husband, 2 children, one in secondary, one in elementary, and he, front loaded part of the conversation with his worry about his kids returning to school, and then also knowing full well our family, right? Myself and my wife, both educators. And I said, part of where I don't talk to him using the edu jargon, but I have talked to him about reflective practice before. And I said, I've had to include in my thinking about school, the possibility of me getting sick and dying. And he paused and he said, how can you put that? He goes, I could never do that. And the way that he talks about it is always about the impossibility of that happening. And that, for him, that works. And that gives him confidence and courage that he is taking for safety. He feels a sense of assurance that he is protecting himself from this possibility. I just said, for me, it's important to look that straight in the eye and say that I'm going to take every step possible and include that possibility in there. And I said, and I'm he's I said it and he said at the same time, but basically it was the phrase of, but you're kind of a positive person, Clef. Like, you're generally a hopeful person. I said, this is my version of being hopeful. It's not it's not about disregarding all the possibilities. It's about sort of taking the abstract and flipping it into a concrete way of thinking about it, because in doing so, I feel like it's the acknowledgement that this is now in my space. You know, this is now in my space. I you know, when I think about the fact that I have home security on my house and I have locked doors, I still have to consider, well, what if someone gets in the house? And because of that, you know, my wife and I both have baseball bats hidden somewhere. So, and we talked with our kids, how would you swing it? Like, we have those conversations. Like, it's just, it's, do I want it to happen? No. Is that something that we have to speak clearly to and prepare for? Yes, we do. And, you know, both Karen and I have had conversations around that, where we both have admitted that this is officially on the list as a non-abstract possibility. So then reflective practice on that does become even more action-based. What are the lists? What's the concrete steps? Because the concrete steps lead to feeling a sense of control, and a sense of, you don't feel like you're as kind of untethered in these thoughts. I got a chance to go in and look at my classroom, and what I hadn't done in the past potentially I'm going to be in 3 different classrooms in September. There's 2 that are kind of connected, as in they share a wall. So I'm going to be walking out. They're in a room number A and B, and it's for 2 different sections. If everything goes the same, 2 different sections of grade 9 learning strategies. And then in second semester, I do a grade 10 section of learning strategies, and it's in a totally different space, totally different place. So I think 1 floor down, opposite side of the school. I go into the classroom, and in the past, I would have only been thinking about, so I stand in the space and I think to myself about the amazing lessons. Like, I look at the room as the opportunity that's inviting me to do. So I'm kind of like, okay, like, I could totally imagine, I'm doing it in the wrong distance here. I can imagine standing here and having this activity happening in this corner. Oh, I love, like, there could be a window there. I'm like, I know how I can use that window with the dry erase markers to kind of do it. So you kind of imagine the lessons even before that happen. How that has changed is I went into both classrooms and I looked to see, is the door a knob or a handle? I look to see, where's the standing space? Because I don't stay, like, you posted up a picture in the past of your classroom, and you'd like to have your work desk, and that is your sort of space where you're going to do X work. I don't like to have a desk at all in my classroom. More space for just movement. In this particular case, next year, more space for spacing. So what I'm actually doing is I was standing in that classroom and I'm thinking to myself, because we have shared classrooms, I think I have to have a conversation with the other teachers that are using this, see if we can get that filing cabinet out of here. I'm looking at the floor space and saying, okay, what could be my path around the classroom and not get inside anyone's bubble? So, and these are, on one hand, someone could hear them like, oh, you're talking about sad things. Again, this is where I go away from abstract and I do concrete reflective practice. I now know I have to have a conversation. I have to have a conversation with the teachers that I share that space with, talking about removing items from that classroom. So this is where I'm really shifting away from open-ended opportunity and saying, what's the next thing I need to do the next time I'm in the school? So, like I said, I'm trying to rock my concrete side. I'm not very good at it. I can admit that I'm not very good at it. But those are the lists that I'm creating right now.
Right on. That's good. And I think it's great that you acknowledge that that's not the type of thinker that you normally are. but that you're kind of wading into that space because you have to out of necessity. I think that's good, man. Like, well, you know how I feel about that. The awareness piece is huge, and then it's probably not comfortable, but I suspect you will find comfort from that discomfort somehow. So that's always a good thing. I feel like this episode has been pretty heavy. I feel spent just talking about because everything, when I say what I'm saying, there's a lot of thinking that goes behind it, right? So that's what makes me tired. But I have to tell you, after we're done, my youngest, he just finished reading one of the Harry Potter books, and now he gets to watch the movie.
Sweet.
So I give my son props because he's like, Dad, we're going to have wings, and we're going to set up I'm pumped. It's not even noon, but I'm gonna have wings for lunch, and I'm gonna get to watch Harry Potter with my boys. So I'm kind of excited, and it's kind of like a boys thing because my wife, she's gone into work.
Saturday.
Well, her school. I got in on Monday, so I was in basically 3 solid days this week, and then she couldn't get in till Thursday, so she went in Thursday, and she had to. There was construction at her school, so she had to pack up her classroom. So on Thursday, she was allowed in, and she unpacked. And then yesterday was a weird day here, so she wasn't able to get back into school. So she's going in on the weekend. She's going in today and tomorrow to prepare her space and get ready with the physical setup, because this week we have to be at work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And my wife and I would both agree we prefer not to have to go into school next weekend, the Labor Day weekend. But hey, if we have to, we have to. But we're going to do what we can to avoid it. So she's going into school. She's already there. She's working. And so the boys and I are going to have like a dude wings and movie type thing. So I'm pumped. I'm looking forward to that. So I will re-energize with my kids. And who knows? I was... I just talking today. There was a lot of energy behind what I had to say, and I didn't even know I had to say it until you and I started talking this morning.
I think that's important. I think that's just the value of this medium. I think it's the value of how you and I relate. I think it's also so different than how we used to shape our podcasts. Because to arrive here just to arrive in a text on a Friday, hey, are we casting tomorrow? It's like, yeah, 8:30. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. And then to arrive here and just start talking. Obviously, we mentioned the on-ramp, but even that doesn't necessarily assure, there's no assurance that our on-ramp will do a damn thing for our actual conversation. Cause there's generally there's a pocket ace that one of us usually has that takes us kind of in a different direction.
I hear you. What do we got today for the art? Oh, is that a finish line that is right on like the edge of a cliff? Is that what I'm seeing, Clef?
I think so.
Oh, wow. That's something, dude. What's really cool about your picture is that, and for those of you who can't see it, get over to YouTube and check it out because it's pretty decent. Clough's he's got a path, and it looks like, well, there's checkered area at the end of the path, which is right at the edge of a cliff, and it says finished. Like there's a finish line, and above it says finished with a question mark. And there's you run to the end of the race, and then you fall off the edge of the cliff. So. Is that what's happening, Clough? Are we running off the edge? Because I tell you right now, if that's the case, brother, I'm wearing a pack on my back, and I'm gonna do some free fall before I pull the chute.
I think they call it base jumping.
Is that what? I've never done it. But
the base jumping is just that leap off the shorter structures. So you get a really intense short free fall, and you're pulling your chute to land well.
And that's all. I can't say anymore. on the on the podcast. I have some things I'd like to say, but I'm going to be a responsible adult and save it for the off ramp.
Nice.
I know you've talked about being able to record the on ramp and the off ramp, but it just, by nature of what those two ramps are, they can't be recorded. It's some things are better left unsaid in a public forum.
Undocumented. Although it would be interesting, just for our own practice, for one of us to make notes on what we talked about. Because there's that sort of parallel podcast that happens just before the podcast. So maybe that's something for season 4 just to mess around with.
We'll find new ways to innovate
Yeah.
space, right?
Yep, for sure.
So thank you to our sponsors, Roland and Chris Wallets, for making this podcast happen. And
that's right. Tap is accepted at all attractions.
This is it for season 3.
This is the finale for season 3.
I can't believe we pulled off 45 episodes in this season. And I can't believe that we're starting up, or at least we're planning on starting up, a 4th year of doing this podcast, which we thought would just, it was a cool experimental thing to start. And it's still going better than ever, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's there's still legs on this. Definitely still legs on this. And if the whole, at least September, we're gonna have a whole lot to talk about.
Oh man, I have a feeling our first couple of episodes are going to be loaded with just like what it looked like at work and how we got through work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we'll see,
for sure.
But that's what I'm feeling.
Yep, I like the supportive structure, brother. Thanks for all the convos.
Yeah, same to you, my friend.
Okay,
let's see what this new season has in store for us.
I'll chat you soon.
Peace.